Okay. So the Jews say the Christians are not grounded on anything. The Christians say the Jews are not grounded on anything, meaning they have no foundation for their beliefs. So Allah is mentioning that and talking about the rivalry between the two of them, but He's trying to make a greater point. And the greater point is, the sisters upstairs, we could please have you quiet down a little bit. Jazakumullah khairan. Some of the sisters from here might be throwing stuff over there if it continues. So we don't want that. All right. And then Allah says, وَهُمْ يَتْلُونَ الْكِتَابَ. They recite the same book. They both recite the book. And what's interesting is that they're basically, both of them are reciting the same book. What that means is they both believe in the Torah. They both believe in the book that was revealed to Prophet Musa. And even today, when we talk about the Bible, right, the Christians, they have a foundation. I forgot what it's called now. Name will come to me later. They have a foundation that puts a copy of the Bible in every single middle and upper class hotel in the entire world. Gideon Foundation, right? So if you go to any major hotel, 2-star, 3-star, 4-star hotel, 5-star hotel, usually you're going to find a copy of the Bible in there. And if you open it up, if you have, sometimes they only put the New Testament. I think they're trying to save money now lately. But what they used to put is, when you say the Bible, it refers to the Old Testament and the New Testament. And the Old Testament that's there is the same book that the Jews are pretty much following as well. So they're following the same book. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, isn't it strange that the Jews are saying that these Christians have no foundation whatsoever? All these gospels and all that stuff that came later on, but the Christians still believe in the texts like the Torah and the version of the Torah that they have and the other books that they have. And he's saying, but the Christians are saying the same thing about these people. These people have no basis whatsoever for anything, but they're reading the same book that you guys are also going back to. All the biblical stories, all the stories about Prophet Noah and Prophet Noah and Noah's Ark and Solomon and Abraham and all of that, they're all coming from Old Testament, which the Jews are reading. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, these people are not agreeing with each other, they're conflicting, and yet a core of what they're reading is the same type of book. So something went wrong there, right? So something is mistaken there. And then Allah says, كَذَلِكَ قَالَ الَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ مِثْلَ قَوْلِهِمْ. And those who have no knowledge say something similar. So what are the people who have no knowledge? When he says the people who have no knowledge, mean the people who have no knowledge about revelation. Meaning they don't have a current revelation with them. So there's 3 main groups of people in Arabia at the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him. There's the Jews, there's the Christians, and then there are the idol worshippers. Idol worshippers don't have a book to go to. The Quraysh didn't have a book. They're like, oh, this is our religious book that we can go to. They just had rituals. Some of those rituals were coming from the time of Prophet Ibrahim, and the rest of them were just coming from their ancestors. So they are the people who are known as the ones who have no knowledge, meaning no knowledge of revelation relative to what the Jews and Christians have. At least they believe in prophets, right? These people have forgotten even belief in just prophets in general. They're saying those people, those idolaters who have no knowledge about revelation, they say something similar. So they're looking at the Muslims and they're like, you know what? You guys have no foundation. And they look at the Jews and say, you guys have no foundation. Look at the Christians, you have no foundation for your beliefs. So what you have is, you have 3 competing religions with each other in Arabia. And each one of them are saying that, you know what? You have no basis for what you're believing. Your religion is false. And it's false because you have nothing to stand on in reality. And then Allah says, فَاللَّهُ يَحْكُمُ بَيْنَهُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ فِيمَا كَانُوا فِيهِ يَخْتَلِفُونَ. Allah will decide between them on the day of judgment about their arguments, meaning about their what they're differing about, what they're arguing about. So each of them says, one of them says, well, we're the saved people. Other people say, no, our religion is the correct one. Say, no, our religion is the correct one. The idolaters say, no, our way of life is the best, and it's the true one. And Allah is saying in the Quran, Allah is going to decide between them on the day of judgment about who is right. And He says, well, Allah is going to decide, meaning Allah is going to publicly decide. Allah already knows who's right. right now. But what's going to happen on the day of judgment, he's going to expose it. He's going to make it clear to everyone. Say, you know what? This was the right path. And what you guys were differing about, no, there was a mistake. You people were mistaken about your religion. You people were mistaken about your religion. And this is what is going to be said regarding them. So there's a few points that we need to talk about here. The first point is when it comes to the Jews and the Christians and the animosity that has existed between them and even during that time. So the Quran is calling upon them and is kind of setting up, you can kind of see the argument being set up and saying, wait a minute, if you guys are all coming from the same source, the Jews and the Christians, they're coming from the same source. So how did something from the same source split apart and diverge into such different beliefs? So now the argument is going to be made. It's going to be made that, well, Islam, this Prophet Muhammad is coming from the same source. Why are you guys splitting and not accepting this when it's exactly the same type of teachings that have been come across the entire time? So that's the first part. The second thing is talking about the animosity between them. And if you look at what exactly do they differ about, right? Historically, the Jews have held that not only do they reject Prophet Isa, right? But they teach in their religious books, the Talmud. So the Jews have two main books. They have the Torah, which is the revelation, slightly modified today from Prophet Musa. And then they have the Talmud. The Talmud is like the teachings of the rabbis on revelation. And it's also known as like the oral Torah. So there's oral teachings that have been passed on. Very important source of Judaism for them. So what do they say in the Talmud about Jesus? It's very clear. They say that Jesus, he practiced magic and he deceived and he led astray Israel. And Israel means the Israelites. So this has been the claim for the most part, and that's why Christians have persecuted Jews for so many centuries. So the Catholic Church in particular has persecuted Jews because they're like, you guys tried to kill Jesus. That's what their belief was. You tried to kill him and you guys were responsible for this. And therefore there's been a lot of animosity and hatred. It's only in the 20th century where things changed. And they changed for two reasons. One reason is because some pope somewhere along the line, this pope like has revelation supposedly directly from Allah. Some pope somehow got a different message and changed the meat and said, no, we don't accept that. You know, the Jews did not. We're not responsible for Jesus being killed. Oh yeah, is that one? I think. Still a little low. There we go. Is that better? Is that good? Can anyone see? Yeah, it's good. Okay. Thank you. So yes, until recently, you know, one of the popes came along and got a different revelation and said, no, we shouldn't say that. We don't believe that anymore. So the teachings of the church changed when it came to that. So that's one reason. And the second reason is establishment of the state of Israel and political interest in the region all of a sudden normalized or improved somehow relations with the Jews. And what did the Christians say? Right? So the Christian, this is what the Christians say, and then this is what the Jews say regarding them. So there's this hostility there. Now, Allah is setting this up and saying these people are all different. Now, here's the problem today. The problem today is that there's a modern group of skeptical people. And the skeptical people, they say, these are mostly like atheists, agnostics, they're not sure about religion, and many young people go through this. They say there's so many religions out there, and every religion claims that it's true. So if they all claim that that is true, we don't know which one to follow. We just say all of them must be wrong. But that's a problem. Right? This is a problem. You can't imagine how many times I've heard from people in high school and college. Their argument against religion is, there's so many religions out there. Okay, so what does that mean? So yeah, they can't all be right. You're right. They can't all be right. No one said that they're all right. So, therefore, what's your solution? The solution is we don't follow any of them. The problem is, it's very simple. If you say they can't all be right, there's so many different religions out there, yes. But can one of them be right? Yes, they can. Can two of them that are contradictory to each other be right? No. It's actually not, it's surprising to me how something that's so simple in logic is missing such highly sophisticated, educated people. And they're simply not understanding that, you know what, just because there's different wrong paths out there, doesn't mean that there's not a right path. Right? It's pretty simple. So you should never get confused with something like this. And Allah is basically giving the answer at the end here. And he's saying, you know what? Yes, there's different ways and people are making different claims. And they're making false claims. A lot of people are making false claims. And you say, well, how can you figure out which claim is true? So there's something intrinsically that you're going to be able to figure out what's true. We've been discussing this throughout the surah. But at the end of the day, Allah is going to decide and tell you which one was correct and which one was wrong. Right? So that actually answers this confusion that people have, that, you know what if, no, well, I can't decide which one is right. Well, Allah knows which one is right. And it's your job to try your best to figure out which one is correct. And you don't allow yourself to start shutting down just because there happens to be other people who are misguiding, right? Other people who are leading you towards something that's not true. Verse 114. وَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنْ مَنَعَ مَسَاجِدَ اللَّهِ أَنْ يُذْكَرَ فِيهَا اسْمُهُ وَسَعَى فِي خَرَابِهَا. Who can be more unjust than one who prevents Allah's name from being mentioned in the mosques of Allah and tries to destroy them? So when you say who can be more unjust, it's basically another way in Arabic to say no one is more unjust than this person. This group of people, or whoever is doing this, is among the worst of people. Now there's some context here. The context is what's going on. Who can be more unjust than the one who prevents Allah's name from being mentioned in the mosques of Allah? So what was one of the main mosques of Allah in the world where the name of Allah was not allowed to be mentioned? Which mosque was that? It was the Kaaba, because the Kaaba is a masjid, Masjid al-Haram, right? So what happened was, this is, remember, Suret Al-Baqarah. The Muslims had already migrated after 13 years of living in Medina, in Mecca. They migrated to Medina, and they were not just migrating like happily. They were basically kicked out. I mean, they were being pressured. The Prophet's life was being threatened. So they leave. And one of the reasons why they would leave is they were not allowed to practice their religion. They were not allowed to go and even worship at the Kaaba freely. It was very difficult. The Quraysh were always causing problems. And now that they're in Medina, the Quraysh are not allowing them in to even go and visit Mecca, to go and pray at the Kaaba. Random Muslims cannot just walk in and be like, you know, well, we migrated to Medina now. Can we have a passport? Can we get a Umrah visa? No Umrah visas allowed. You people are not coming. In fact, if you try and come near us, we'll attack you and they were in a state of war. There was a cold war taking place between Mecca and Medina once they had migrated. So now the Muslims are like, wait a minute, we can't even go and we can't even worship at the Kaaba, which is one of the masjids of one of the mosques of Allah. In fact, it's the main mosque of Allah, right? We say, who could be more unjust than these people, like the idolaters of Mecca and the Quraysh, who are in charge of it, and they're preventing the name of Allah from being mentioned, meaning prayer by Muslims is not allowed at the Kaaba. Who could be more unjust than that? And tries to destroy them. These people are ruining the Kaaba. I mean, what are they doing? They're putting their idols in there, they're messing up everything, and they're trying to go and destroy other masjids. So they're trying to attack Medina. And then you have Masjid al-Nabawi. They're going to go and attack Medina. They want to obliterate the Muslims, and even that masjid is going to be destroyed. Masjid Quba was built by then, it's going to be destroyed. So he says, look at what they're doing. Who could be worse than these type of people? So now it's criticizing them, and you see the transition. If you remember last week, I told you that Suret Al-Baqarah, half of it is talking about the children of Israel, the Bani Israel. And then the transition slowly begins away from them and towards the Muslim community and Ummah. And here you can see now the transition is going away from the children of Israel and all the stories of everything. And now it's slowly coming back to the Quraysh, to Mecca, and it's going to directly affect or talk about the new Muslim Ummah right now. So it's saying, who can be worse than these people? The Quraysh. Right? These people had control over the Kaaba. Allah says, أولئك ما كان لهم أن يدخلوها إلا خائفين. It is not appropriate for such people to enter them except in awe. Right? So what does that mean, except in awe or except in fear? Meaning, these people, the people who are in charge of the Kaaba, these people don't really deserve to be in charge and have authority over the Kaaba or over any other Muslim because of the way in which they're corrupt. These people are not allowing the proper practice. They don't have the right beliefs. So Allah is saying these people are bad people who could be worse than them. And then it's saying this should never have happened in the first place. They're not deserving of having this level of authority. And in fact, they should be in awe of the Muslims. So there's like a little prophecy. This is like actually a prophecy telling about an event that's going to happen in the future. Right here, this part of the verse. It's basically saying that, you know what? A time is going to come very soon when the Muslims are going to take authority over the Kaaba. And then these people, when they try and come and visit the Kaaba, they're going to be in awe. They're going to be like the Muslims, you know, they're the ones in authority. The situation is going to flip around and the Muslims are going to be in charge. So that's basically what it's saying. See, that's what's supposed to happen and that's what's going to happen. Now, this was a prophecy that nobody would have believed at the time. Because if you look at it, the Muslims just migrated. They just fled from Mecca. When you run away and then you say, you know, by the way, we're going to take over Mecca and we're going to be in control of the Kaaba, nobody would believe you. But this prophecy came true within just a few years, and Makkah was conquered. Then Allah says, لَهُمْ فِي الدُّنْيَا خِزْيٌ وَلَهُمْ فِي الْآخِرَةِ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ. They will be humiliated in this world, and they will have a severe punishment in the next one. Okay, so now here, humiliation, khizyun, right? لَهُمْ فِي الدُّنْيَا خِزْيٌ. Usually when Allah talks about humiliation, He's talking about humiliation in the akhirah, in the next life. Whenever Allah threatens or says to somebody, you know what, you need to stop what you're doing, otherwise you're going to be held accountable. Usually it means you're going to be accountable in the next life. But there are some times where Allah says, this is one of them, says, no, you're going to see the effects in this life. You're going to be humiliated in this life, just you watch, and in the next life too. It's like a dual failure. You know? You're going to lose in this life and you're going to lose in the next life. So this is a prophecy about the conquest of Mecca. And this exactly happens in a few years where these people who were oppressing, who were not allowing people to go and worship in the mosques of Allah like the Kaaba, the whole situation turned around on them and exactly what the Quran had predicted happened. Right? So a prophecy that came true very soon after the verses came down. وَلِلَّهِ الْمَشْرِقُ وَالْمَغْرِبُ. Allah owns the east and the west. Okay, so basically Allah owns all directions. So let me go to the next part. فَإِنَّمَا تُوَلُّوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. So wherever you turn, Allah is there. Right? So basically when you're going to pray or when you're going to make dua, if you're not facing directly in the direction of the Qibla, does Allah not still know your prayer? Does Allah not still hear you? Yes. So what happened is that this idea of facing in a particular direction, this is not unique to Muslims. Right? Today, it's funny, people come in for, they come to visit like Open Mosque Day, they come in for Islam 101 presentation, and then we talk about, we face the Qibla, we face northeast because it faces towards Mecca. Wow, this idea of like facing in a particular direction, so interesting. We've never heard of this. All religions have had this. People just don't know the history of their own religion. They just kind of forgot all of these things. Other religions always had their direction of worship as well. The Persians and the fire worshippers, they used to face a certain direction. The Christians faced a certain directions. The Jews faced a certain direction. So what happened was, during the time of the Prophet, if you look at where the Christians are situated, a little bit of history, right? So you have Arabia here, and you have two major empires nearby. You have the Roman Empire, to the west, northwest, like the area of Syria and Eastern Europe. And this is the Byzantine Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire. And then you have to the northeast, you have the Persian Empire, the Sassanid Empire, who are the Magians and fire worshippers and things like that. So you have these two main ones. And the Syrian Christians, what they would do is they would be facing east. So Allah mentions Allah owns the east and the west. So it's saying basically the Syrian Christians, as well as the sun worshippers, they would face east for prayer. Now, why are the Christians facing towards the east? That's in the direction of where Jerusalem was. So they're in that area and they're facing towards the east. Why would the sun worshippers face east when they're praying? Yes. Sun rises from the east. They go, oh, look, the sun is coming up. We're going to pray to the sun because we see the sunrise taking place. So they would pray in that direction. And then some people would face in the west for different meanings. Say, oh, there's sunset. The sunset has a different meaning. And that's why Muslims are not allowed to pray at sunset and sunrise, because this is something that was very widespread. Some people do it still today, very few, but it was something very widespread. So we're not supposed to be facing any particular direction. So I'll take the question during Q&A time. So what is Allah saying here? Allah is not in any particular location. Allah is not restricted and confined to any location. Allah owns the directions of east and west. All these places and directions that you pray, doesn't matter. Allah is in control of this, and Allah is never bound by anything. If you're bound by a direction, it means you're limited. Allah is not bound by any direction. Allah is unlimited. Allah is infinite. So he's saying basically wherever you turn, wherever you pray, if you're unable to pray in a particular area, okay, Allah is there. I mean, Allah knows everything. You don't have to worry about it. And it says, Inna Allah wasi'un alim. Allah is all enclosing, all knowledgeable. So meaning, this is this interesting term here. So wasi' in modern Arabic, this is why modern Arabs really read Tafsir if they're going to translate. Wasi' means wide, right? This would be the worst translation ever, to say Allah is wide. Never translate like that, okay? So here, wasi' means that you are encompassing something, something that is finite and limited is now being encompassed completely. Allah has the ability to do that. No matter how large anything can possibly be, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is far superior, infinite above that, infinite beyond that. So Allah is the one who encompasses everything. He's all enclosing, but he is never encompassed by anything. He can never be enclosed by anything because it's infinite. And that's the definition of infinity. You can never have any limit on either side. That's what infinite means. Infinite in this direction, infinite in this direction, right? In terms of both time as well as not bound by space anyways. So this is what wasi' means. And he is knowledgeable. He is all knowledgeable. So what's going on here is that it's talking about the direction of prayer. And it's saying, look, the previous verse, that you Muslims, you guys are not allowed to pray at the Kaaba, but you still have a direction in which you're going to pray. And even if you're not able to face in the direction for whatever reason, or if people are facing in different directions or something like that, it doesn't matter. You know, Allah is not restricted to any particular direction. Of course, we're going to still, like today, don't go home and be like, yeah, I can pray in any direction, because Allah knows there's still a rule. The rule is, there's a rule, and there's the rule is there for a reason, for the purpose of uniting the entire Muslim community together. So we face towards the Qibla whenever we pray. But for some reason, if you can't, or if you're going to make dua or something like that, you don't have to be facing towards the Qibla. And Allah still hears your dua. It's not like he doesn't know what's going on. So Allah is trying to indicate this, and then he's talking about the idea of a Qibla or a direction for prayer, and he's connecting this with the fact that the Muslims are not allowed to worship at the Kaaba. And also he's connecting this with people who face in different directions like the Jews and the Christians. All of this is going to come and start connecting with the verses that come afterwards. So the next verse. وَقَالُوا اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ وَلَدًا. They say Allah has taken a son. So So who believes Allah has taken a son? The Christians. They're saying, they say, meaning the Christians, they say, Allah has taken unto himself a son. Now, we've spoken quite a bit about Christianity already, and a little bit about the Trinity and stuff already in previous sessions. And what you got to understand is that there's different understandings of Christianity among the Christians. There's major different groups of Christians. There's the Catholic Church, and then there's the Protestant Reformation, and there's the Eastern Orthodox Church, and then there's the there's the Coptic Church. And historically, there's been many different groups in Christianity that had these theological schisms. And the biggest thing that divided them was them trying to make sense of what does their religion say about Jesus in terms of, is he divine? Is he part of a Trinity? If he's part of the Trinity, is Mary, divine as well? Was he God and man at the same time, or God turned into man and then turned back into God? I'm trying to understand this concept. And when they couldn't agree, they had different councils, right? They had Council of Nicaea, they had the Council of Ephesus, and the Council of Trent, and so many different councils saying that this is what we believe, and anyone who doesn't accept this, you guys are like not part of us. So here, the wording is very significant. It says, ittakhadha. Ittakhadha means that he's taken unto himself a son. This is interesting because there's a type of Christianity known as adoptionist Christianity. Right? So some people say he's, the idea of many Christians believe that God basically kind of put his spirit into Jesus and basically became Jesus. This is a different claim that's being addressed. But now it's addressing kind of like a lighter form of Christianity, or I could say a less evil, or a less wrong form of Christian theology. And that is the adoptionist Christianity, where basically they say, okay, we believe that Jesus was a man. I'm not saying that he was God, but he was adopted by God. This is adoption taking place here. He was adopted by him, and then he was given divine knowledge and power, which makes him divine, rather than automatically being divine from the beginning. So, it's addressing that in particular and saying you have a form of Christianity that's being addressed here. And somewhere else in the Quran, you have a form of Trinity being addressed. Somewhere else in the Quran, you have a form of Mary being divine, being addressed. So what happens, you should be a little bit careful. I'll just mention this because we've had recently some missionaries setting up shop outside the ICOI. So my suggestion, as I mentioned before, a few weeks ago, is to not engage them at all here on home court. Because if you engage them, they're training, they'll just keep coming and they'll keep bothering other people. If you want to engage with them, go to Irvine Spectrum, go to 3rd Street Front. There's so many places you can go to engage with them. And just let me know if you're interested. I'll give you all the locations where they are, and you can go and you can talk to them or whatever you want to do. But this is not the best place for you. If we keep engaging them, they're like, great, customers just keep coming at ICOI. This is the best place to set up shop, and this is not helpful because some people will come and they'll waste their time. Even if they won't get affected, they'll just waste their time. Instead of coming for a Quran study class or Dr. Haifa's class, they're going to be outside thinking that they're making some, way with someone who's a trained missionary or in training right now. It's not a good idea. You can always do this somewhere else. I'm not saying you shouldn't shy away from it. You shouldn't be scared of it, but just there's a right time and there's a wisdom to do that. But anyways, the point is that there are different types of Christianity, and the Quran addresses all those different types. It's very important to understand this, because sometimes when you're talking to a Christian, they'll be like, no, we don't believe that. We don't believe that about Mary, or we don't believe that about Jesus, and that's what your Quran is saying. Not true. The Quran is addressing different forms of Christianity that existed at the time, and they still exist at this time. So he's mentioning this anyways. That's adoptionist Christianity. They say Allah has taken a son. Even the lightest form of Christian theology is being addressed here. Subhana, بَلْ لَهُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. He is pure. Look at the response. Subhanahu, meaning Allah is pure. And this is like a, what's the term? This is like a shock and a wonder, like a surprise. How dare you say something like, how could you even say something like that? The reason why I'm bringing this up, it's very important. Because sometimes we become like desensitized. We're just like, you know what? Oh, but they're making a claim. We're making a claim. The two claims, we just need to analyze which one is true. We should just be very calm about it. Allah is saying, think about the implication. You're basically saying that Allah has taken an actual son. Do you realize, do you realize the severity of your statement? So I put this here in the parentheses here. He is pure from these insulting limitations. You're basically saying that, Allah turned into a human. Like, that's what you're saying? It's like, if you said Allah turned into an animal, that wouldn't bother you? Nothing strikes you that something is wrong with that? That's an insulting thing. If you said that about someone, if you said, oh yeah, that guy over there, he became a dog for a while, and he came back, you'd be offended. You'd be like, how dare you say something like that? You'd be offended. And you're saying you're doing this to God. You're telling Allah, the one who's infinite, the one who created everything, to turn into a human being. And he's going to the bathroom, and he's sleeping, and he's eating. It doesn't bother you. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts this in here for emotion. This is not a dry argument. Remember, the Quran has rational arguments. But most people, they don't just need dry rational arguments. They need some power. They need some life in there. This is subhanallah. Like, how dare you try and say something like that? Allah is pure compared to all of this. بَلْ لَهُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Actually, He owns everything in the heavens and the earth. Like, how can some materialistic form of fatherhood be attributed to Allah when He controls everything? You say now, yeah, He's a father and He's a husband and He's procreating, and subhanAllah, how can you say something like that? So the Quran is very firm on what it's saying here. كُلُّ لَهُ قَانِتُونَ. Everything obeys Him. Everything is submissive to Allah. It's trying to reason with people, and it's trying to make them understand the severity of the statement. This is not something you take lightly. This is a very severe statement. So then the Quran continues to identify and explain and describe who is Allah, right? To clarify the concept. Badi'u samawati wal ard. He is the originator of the heavens and the earth. The one who started everything. Nothing would exist if it was not for Allah. And this is now, see, the more you define Allah, the more you negate all the things that Allah is not. And this is very important, to understand. Like, most of you have this memorized. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Right? But it starts by saying, say, He is Allah the One. Then Allah it defines who Allah is. When you define who Allah is, you're also actually doing the opposite and saying, who is Allah not? In order to clarify all the false beliefs. Right? So this is the way of the Quran, this is the way of Islam explaining what Allah is and what Allah is not. So Badi'u samawati wal ard, He's the originator of the heavens and the earth. وَإِذَا قَضَىٰ أَمْرًا فَإِنَّمَا يَقُولُ لَهُ كُنْ فَيَكُونُ. Whenever He decides something, He just says, exist. And it comes into existence. Right? So that's all He has to do. When He's in control of everything, He can cause anything to be. So He created everything. He can cause anything to be. How can you possibly attribute something to Allah? The next verse. وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ لَوْلَا يُكَلِّمُنَا اللَّهُ أَوْ تَأْتِينَا آيَةٌ. Those who have no knowledge, they say. Now, who are the ones who have no knowledge? The idolaters. And they have no knowledge of what? The revelation. So it's referring to them again. What do they say? Why doesn't Allah speak to us? Or a sign come to us? So why doesn't Allah speak to us? So the first problem is, so why doesn't Allah speak to us directly? If their problem was, they said, okay, well, we're not accepting that the Prophet Muhammad is receiving revelation. So if we want us to believe, Allah should just talk to us directly. We should all be prophets. Everyone should independently receive revelation. And the response, the answer to this is that, first of all, if that happens, then there would be no test, right? There would be no point of you even being in this world. There would be no point of you being created or anything like that. And the second is Allah picks whomever He wants to choose. So why would He pick you? Somebody from Quraysh who's like wealthy, powerful. People used to think, even in the previous prophets, with the wealthy, powerful people, they're like, well, if someone was going to be picked, it should be me. That's like jealousy, thinking that you're better. So when you think you're better, you think, oh, I should be the one who's picked. But you don't get picked, right? Because Allah knows who He's picking. Like in a company, some people, maybe your colleague will get promoted to senior vice president, and you're upset. This doesn't make sense. I've been with the company longer. I'm smarter. I'm better. I'm this. I'm that. And that. And you wanted to be picked. You say, but this is the person that got picked. It's just, why not me? So this is one of the objections that they're making. And then the second one, say, why don't we get a sign? And by sign, they specifically meant, because the Quran is a sign, and the Prophet is saying, look, I've come to you with the sign. And he also came with some miracles. What they mean is, why don't we get to pick our sign? So we get to decide. So what we want to see this mountain. The mountains around Mecca, right? We're going to pick that mountain, and we want it to fly into the air and land back down. We want to see a miracle that we get to choose whatever we want. You say, you know what, if that's the case, everyone gets to pick whatever they want, then where's the test? And where's the belief? And even if you did, you still wouldn't believe, right? So it's addressing these two accusations that they were making, or these two arguments that they were making. The idolaters were making these arguments against the Prophet. And it's saying, this is what they're saying. كَذَلِكَ قَالَ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ مِثْلَ قَوْلِهِمْ. The people before them said something like that. So the previous prophets, they had people who rejected as well. So the same people of those other prophets, they made the exact same claim to their prophets. And if you go back and you look at the people, some of them, Allah granted them whichever miracle they asked for, they got it. Like the people of Salih, right? When it comes to the camel, some of you know the story. There's historical reports which say that Prophet Salih said, what miracle do you guys want? And they're like, wow, we want to see a camel come out of this mountain. And they got their miracle, and they still didn't believe, right? So they got to pick their miracle, and still it wasn't good enough for them. And this idea of Allah speaking directly, they saw miracles in front of them, and they still rejected. So it didn't help. So the Quran is saying, yeah, we already addressed these stories in the Quran, and we know people are going to make these claims, but it doesn't mean that they're going to believe, even if these claims would be fulfilled. تَشَابَهَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ. Their hearts are similar. I mean, the hearts of these idolaters of Mecca are similar to the people who rejected the prophets of the past. Their hearts are similar and they're blind. They don't want to see, no matter what. So they're asking for all these things. Even if we gave it to them, they still wouldn't believe. And we're not going to give it to them because it would actually compromise that. It's not even fair in terms of the test. قَدْ بَيَّنَّا الْآيَاتِ لِقَوْمٍ يُوقِنُونَ. We made the signs clear for people who can be convinced, or who are willing to be convinced. So that means that we've already given the signs. Allah is saying, we already gave you the signs. We gave you the Prophet. We gave you his reputation. We gave you the Quran. You see the beauty and we talked about the Quran being a challenge to people. We gave you all of that. So there's arguments made in the Quran about why you should believe. There are prophecies that are being fulfilled in the Quran. There are miracles that are coming. You've seen all of these clear signs your way for people who are open and willing to see the truth, but you people are not of those. See, some people are just closed-minded. No matter what you do, no matter what they see, they're not willing to believe. So the Quran is basically coming and saying that, you know what, that's what you people are, and that's why your arguments, there's no point of responding to these arguments any further. إِنَّا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ بِالْحَقِّ بَشِيرًا وَنَذِيرًا. We have surely sent you with the truth. You, meaning the Prophet, what's your role? What's your job? To give good news and to warn. So who gets the good news? The believers. Who is warned? The people who are going to reject. So the job and the role of the prophets and the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is to tell the truth, but to let people know the ones who are going to believe, they're going to be fine. And the ones who reject, giving them a warning so that they can't say later on that, you know what, I didn't know or I wasn't warned. وَلَا تُسْأَلُ عَنْ أَصْحَابِ الْجَحِيمِ. You will not be asked about the people of hellfire. Okay, so here when it says you, it's not talking about you. You is talking to the Prophet, meaning you are not going to be asked about those people. Why? Why would this even be here? Because the Prophet is going and he's warning his people and he's telling them, and when they're rejecting, how does he feel? He feels sad, right? He's feeling bad. These people are not accepting the message. I'm bringing the truth. And he's kind of thinking like, you know what, am I not doing it correctly? Do I need to put in more effort? What's going on? And Allah's basically saying, you're not going to be asked about these people. You did your job. You're doing your job just fine. So don't be bothered. Don't be sad. Keep doing what you're doing and don't worry about the rest. All right, this is an important lesson for us too. Like if you're doing something right, stop worrying. Because if you get into worry, then you're gonna think, well, what if I this and what if I that? And if as long as you did everything right and it's pretty clear, you double check it, you do some peer review and everything, it's very clear that you're doing the right things. You are not in control of other people's reactions. This is what counselors say today all the time. Right? People go for therapy and there's problems with your spouse, you have a problem with your family, you have a problem with your parents, you have a problem with your children, adult children, right? Nothing you're like, I'm trying and I'm giving them everything they want and I'm being so nice to them and I'm using the exact words, I'm using I statements, avoiding you statements, I'm doing everything by the book, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do, I'm reflecting back exactly what I think I heard you saying, and the person's still not happy and they're not satisfied and they're always making fun of me or they're getting mad at me or whatever it is. You are not responsible for other people's behavior. You are responsible for your behavior. Same thing. So the Prophet is basically being told, you're responsible for delivering the message. You're not responsible for whether they accept the message or not. And this is really powerful. It sounds like so obvious, right? When people are going through a difficulty, they need to hear that because it helps recalibrate their mind and they're like, oh, yeah, I'm okay. As long as I'm doing that, because you're not in control of what other people can do. And it bothers you. It even bothered the Prophet. So if it bothered the Prophet, he needed a reminder. He's getting a reminder from Allah. When your friend or your therapist or your counselor or whatever tells you the same thing, you need a reminder. The Prophet needed a reminder. Next verse. وَلَن تَرْضَىٰ عَنْكَ الْيَهُودُ وَلَا النَّصَارَىٰ حَتَّىٰ تَتَّبِعَ مِلَّتَهُمْ. Neither the Jews nor the Christians will ever be pleased with you. Right? They'll never be happy with you unless you follow their religion or until you follow their religion. Basically, they're saying no matter how much you try, no matter how much you try to compromise with them, no matter what you do, they're not going to be happy. So the idolaters are rejecting the Prophet. And the Jews and the Christians of the time, they're rejecting the Prophet as well. And it's saying, you know what? The Prophet is trying. He's like, look, we're so close. We have the message, the prophets are the same. The book is almost, we believe in the same books. We're like almost there. And he's trying to make some kind of compromises to kind of get them to open up and saying, you know what? At the end of the day, they're simply, until you accept 100% their way, they're not going to be fully satisfied with you. So don't lose sleep over it, and don't ever try to compromise something that's uncompromisable. There are some things you can compromise. We're going to talk about like the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. Sometimes you can give some things and say, it's okay, not a big deal. You can't compromise something that's a core part of the religion, right? And this is something that Muslims need to hear, especially in our environment, because when you're in an environment and you're a minority and you have all these different beliefs out there which are influencing Muslims, and there's a lot of pressure on us. You have to conform, you have to assimilate, you need to reform your religion the way that Christianity was reformed by Martin Luther and the Protestant Reformation and all that stuff. You guys are living whatever.
Spider. It's just like Spider-Man.
Right.
And to get to the other side of the web, it shoots blood out from its mouth.
Okay, so what is the response is, no, we're not going to compromise something that we're not able to compromise on, because we're not going to change our religion at all, right? So when you get a reminder and you say, you know what, there are people out there, they'll never be satisfied, no matter how nicely you try and present Islam, and no matter how much you try to be nice and accommodating to them, until you follow their way, they're not going to accept you. Right, and I think we're learning that the hard way as Muslims in America, because Muslims in America, they thought that, you know, there's some people, they talk really nice, like, oh, we like Muslims, and Muslims are so good, and you know, you're welcome, we welcome you in our country, we're a multicultural, pluralistic community. And then all of a sudden, the Muslims try to do something, you know, that's like patently Islamic, they're like, oh no, you can't do that. We can't allow you to do that. You can't have that level of freedom. There's a certain type of good Muslim that you need to be according to our usually liberal definitions of being a Muslim. And if you don't fit in this mold, then no. There's a good Muslim, bad Muslim dichotomy, and we're accepting only the good Muslims. We're not accepting your understanding of Islam. And that's the problem. So we need to be very careful. You have to realize that there's some people, they will outwardly say, yeah, we're all good, we like you guys. But in reality, they're not going to accept you until you compromise on your religion. And this is the reminder for us. قُلْ إِنَّ هُدَى اللَّهِ هُوَ الْهُدَى. Say, telling the Prophet, tell them, the guidance of Allah is the guidance. What does that mean? Meaning the guidance of Allah is the only true guidance. There's only one right path, and that is the straight path. That's why Islam is about Ihdina Suret Al-Mustaqim, guide us on the straight path. And they say the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. You go directly to Allah. You don't have to go to idol this, priest this to confess your sins, and then it's going to get you to Allah. You don't have to go through any of these slanted curves and stuff like that. Straight. There's one religion, the guidance of Allah, the religion of Allah is the true guidance, and that's what we're supposed to follow. وَلَئِنِ اتَّبَعْتَ أَهْوَاءَهُمْ بَعْدَ الَّذِي جَاءَكَ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ مَا لَكَ مِنَ اللَّهِ مِنْ وَلِيٍّ وَلَا نَصِيرٍ. If you, meaning Prophet, if you were to follow their whims and their desires, meaning of the Jews and the Christians, or the idolaters, after the knowledge has come to you, meaning after the knowledge of what is true from Allah has come to you, no one would be able to protect you or help you against Allah. Now again, this sounds like, wait a minute, why would Allah say this to the Prophet? Prophet would never do something like this. It's a rhetorical statement. It's like, if you hypothetically were to even do something like this, even no one could protect you, and it's like, of course, you would never even dream of doing something like that. But the message is that the Prophet is being told this, and indirectly the message is for all other Muslims, because he would have obviously never do something like this. So it's saying, you people too, you should never do something like this, because you know the truth and you know what is false. All right, and then this is the last verse. Then take questions. الذين آتيناهم الكتاب يتلونه حق تلاوته أولئك يؤمنون به. Those to whom we gave the book and they recite it the way it should be recited, they believe in. Now, if you look at the commentary here, right? Those to whom we gave the book. So who is it referring to? It's referring to the Jews and the Christians, because they're people of the book. They received an original revelation. And they recite it the way it should be recited. Now, a lot of Muslims, they use this verse to say you need to learn tajweed and properly recite the Quran, which is, you should try to recite the Quran correctly with the right, letters and all of that stuff. But that's actually not what this verse is talking about. All right, this verse is actually talking about that they read it the right way, with the right understanding, without twisting the meanings or anything like that, meaning they're humble, they have an open mind, they're trying to understand it, saying these people are going to eventually believe it. Because there were people of the book who were Jews and Christians, and when they read the book and they started reading it properly, they realized, you know what? The Prophet Muhammad is a true prophet. This is the message of Islam that we've been waiting for, our prophecies. Remember Deuteronomy 18:18 and all the other things we talked about? This is exactly what we've been waiting for. So it's saying the people who read it correctly, these are the people who are going to believe in it. وَمَن يَكْفُرْ بِهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْخَاسِرُونَ. The ones who reject it are the losers. Right? So this is this section, inshallah ta'ala. And Isha is still at 9, right? So I'll take questions. Yes.
While we things, right? But let's say we would face Mecca. If you look behind you, does it kind of also?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So if you're at the Kaaba and you're facing the Kaaba, you're facing the Kaaba. If you turn your back to the Kaaba, don't you technically go around the whole earth and you're facing the Kaaba from the other side? So technically, yes, but that's the longer direction. So you're supposed to get the shortest distance to the Kaaba. So wherever you're facing, you're supposed to go shortest distance. That's why in California, we go northeast instead of going southeast, because it's a longer direction. And also, again, this idea of, imagine you were at the Kaaba. Does it look like you're actually facing the other side, or does it look like you have your back towards the Kaaba? So your immediate perception plays a role, and then shortest distance plays a role. Okay, other question. Yeah. Were they in charge? Oh, okay. Question is, was there somebody in charge of Mecca at the time when the Quraysh were in control? Was it like a mayor or something like that? Yeah, so there were leaders, there were certain clan leaders who were given certain responsibilities over parts. There was like a mayor of this and a mayor of that. So yes, there were. Did they accept Islam? The second question is, some of them accepted Islam eventually, and some of them did not accept Islam. So when they accepted Islam, when they were in control, the ones who accepted Islam during this time, they migrated to Medina. The ones who accepted Islam later, it was already after the conquest of Mecca, and the Muslims were already in control. So right now, at this point in time, in the beginning of the Medinan phase, the Quraysh of Mecca, idol worshippers, are in charge of the Kaaba. And then the Muslims take it over in the year 8 after Hijrah, 8 years after the Hijrah. Is taking over land considered haram? If some land doesn't belong to you, then yes. But if you're doing it and you're a prophet and you're trying to purify the idols from the house which actually was built by Prophet Ibrahim, a different scenario. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
How we talked about last time how the Jews call themselves Jews, right? And Christians often term themselves. Now, if we were to look at obviously the Quran is the Torah, but is that really how we translated? Because that's what they call themselves. So the drawing phrase, there's a name for them that we call the original, and obviously they call them two words, right? And two words being
so the question is, the Jews call themselves Jews and the Christians call themselves Christians. So in the Quran, does the word Yahud and Nasara, is it referring to some original term that they call themselves, or is it referring to the modern day terms? So actually, Nasara comes from Nazarenes, right? The word itself, right? And it's not actually Christians, so it's actually a different term. That was one of the original terms that the followers of Jesus would refer to themselves. So when it comes to Nasara, it is referring to them because Jesus of Nazareth, right? When it comes to Yahud, Also, it's not like Judaism or Jews, but it's coming from the same thing. But Allah identifies people with their own claim that they make for themselves. So he makes, for example, Allah calls Fir'aun, is the Pharaoh. Now, technically, he's nothing. He claims to be Pharaoh, and over Egypt, he's Pharaoh. Allah is not trying to negate the claim because there's no point of arguing over semantics. So he just uses the descriptive title to address them and then respond to what they're saying. I will conclude here, inshallah. I can take questions after Salah, inshallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك السلام عليكم.